My daughter told me her grandpa was giving her money for college. I was grateful, until I found out he told her I was useless, a failure, and that he'd step in because her real parent wasn't around. When I confronted him, he said, "Someone has to take over, and clearly it's not you." That night, I burned the only gift he ever gave me, and started writing something he'd never be able to ignore. I'm a 44-year-old single mom from Spokane, Washington. I've been raising my daughter Abby alone since she was 6. Her father left without warning. No call. No letter. Just a text that said, "This isn't for me." Then nothing. I remember that night like it was yesterday. Abby was eating Cheerios in the living room, feet swinging off the couch, waiting for him to come home. I stared at the phone in my hand for hours, wondering if I should lie. I didn't. I told her Daddy wasn't coming back, and she didn't ask again. That's how it started. Me and her. Just us. I was never rich. I worked whatever job I could get. Waitressing, janitorial, hospital food prep. If it paid and had hours, I took it. I worked late shifts, weekends, holidays. My hands hurt all the time. My back hasn't felt right since 2012. But Abby always had what she needed. She had food, clothes, books. I never let her feel the panic I lived with. Rent always came first. I skipped meals sometimes so she wouldn't. She never knew that part. She still doesn't. Now to my dad. His name is Earl. He's 71, and he's the type of man who likes to remind you how much he's accomplished without ever asking how you're doing. He worked his way up in a finance company in Seattle. Drove a BMW. Bragged about golf games with regional VPs. He retired early, bought a house in a retirement community in Liberty Lake, and started writing a legacy memoir. Growing up, he made it clear I was a disappointment. I wasn't driven enough. I wasn't smart with money. I didn't have the instinct for leadership. I got pregnant at 25, unmarried, working 2 jobs. He stopped talking to me for over a year. The only gift he ever gave me was a wooden jewelry box when I was 10. He said, "For when you grow up and actually accomplish something." I kept it anyway, because back then I still thought he'd come around. Fast forward to now, Abby's 17. Smart kid. Ambitious. She wants to be a nurse. She studied her ass off, even while working part-time at a grocery store. We talked about college a lot, but I never lied to her. I didn't know how I'd pay for it. One night she came home and said something that caught me off guard. "Grandpa Earl's helping me with college." I stopped drying the dishes. "What do you mean?" She smiled and showed me a check. It was written out for $10,000. I was stunned. "Wow," I said. "That's really generous." "Yeah." He said he wants to make sure someone in the family ends up successful. I didn't like the way she said it, but I let it go. I called Earl that night. I actually thanked him. His exact words were, "Well, someone has to invest in her future. You've done what you could, but it's time for someone to take over." I felt the heat rise in my chest. I bit my tongue and said, "Thanks." Again. Then I hung up. But after that, things changed. Abby started treating me different. Like I was just there, not important. She stopped asking me things. She rolled her eyes when I made suggestions. She started saying stuff that sounded like it came straight out of Earl's mouth. "You always settle, Mom. You don't push yourself. You've never really had a plan." One night she flat out said, "You didn't do much with your life. Grandpa says you never had ambition." I stood there stunned, a sponge in my hand, soap dripping onto the floor. "Excuse me?" She shrugged. "He didn't mean it in a bad way. He just said you're dependable. But you never aimed higher." That night I sat on my bed and stared at the old wooden jewelry box. The one Earl gave me when I was 10. I opened it, stared at the empty velvet lining. I hadn't put anything in it for years. Then I got up, walked outside, doused it in lighter fluid, and lit it on fire in the backyard. I didn't cry. I watched it burn. That was when the anger set in. The deep, cold kind. Not the kind that passes. The kind that sits in your chest and makes you plan. Earl always talked about his legacy. He was working on a book. His professional memoir, he called it. He'd bring it up all the time, like he was Churchill or something. "I've had a life worth studying," he once said. "There are lessons here for anyone who wants to rise." That's when I decided I'd write my own version. One he couldn't control. One people would actually read. I called it The Father Figure. I wrote every night after work, after Abby was asleep. I started from the beginning. I told the truth. The real truth. I wrote about how he mocked me for being a single mom. About how he told me I was damaged goods, when my husband left. About how he said, "You'll never raise a winner working at diners." But I didn't just write about me. I dug into him. I found former coworkers, old colleagues, people he'd wronged. One woman told me he forced her out of a promotion by finding a mistake in her files and reporting her to HR. She said she cried in the parking lot for 2 hours the day she got let go. I found another man who said Earl stole a deal he spent months preparing, pitched it to the board, and took credit for it. He left the company right after that with a fat bonus. I didn't need to exaggerate. The truth was enough. I also wrote about Abby. About our life. The nights I ate cereal for dinner so she could have chicken nuggets. The time I walked 5 miles in the snow to pick her up because I couldn't afford the toffee. The panic attacks I hid. The fear. The strength it took to keep smiling anyway. Then I uploaded it. I published it anonymously, but I didn't hide who it was about. Not really. I posted it to parenting forums. Shared excerpts in private Facebook groups for single moms. A few people started sharing it. Then more. Then Reddit got a hold of it. People started asking, "Is this about Earl R. from Liberty Lake?" I never said yes. But I didn't say no. I watched the page views go up. The comments poured in. Some were harsh. Some were kind. But almost everyone had the same reaction. What kind of father does that to his own daughter? That's where I'll pause for now. I haven't even gotten to what happened next with Earl. Or Abby. Or the call I got from someone who knew exactly what I'd done, and wanted more. After the story went out, I didn't expect much. I figured a few people would read it, maybe share it, and that'd be it. But within 2 weeks, everything started changing. Earl called me. I didn't answer. He left a voicemail. "You think this is funny? You're ruining my reputation. This is slander. Take it down." I didn't respond. Instead, I watched the analytics on the post double overnight. Apparently, someone from his old company had seen it. Then a few others. People were talking. Some of them knew the stories I told. Others added comments with their own stories. It grew legs of its own. Then I got a message through my contact form on the site where I'd posted the father figure. It was from a woman named Colleen. She used to be in PR for the same company Earl worked at. She said, "Your story is making the rounds. They're discussing whether to remove him from the alumni network." That's when I realized this wasn't just embarrassing him. It was hurting him. Good. But then came the twist I wasn't ready for. Abby. One night, she came into my room holding her phone. Her face was pale. I was folding laundry. "Mom, why didn't you tell me?" she said, voice shaking. I thought she meant the story. But she didn't. She meant everything, what he said behind my back, what he did to others, the full truth about who Earl was. "I just read your article. Someone posted it in the school group chat. People are saying it's about Grandpa. Is it?" I nodded. "I didn't want to drag you into it," I said. "You deserve to find out who he was on your own." She sat on my bed. Quiet. For a long time. Then she whispered, "I told him things. About you. Stuff I shouldn't have." That hit harder than I expected. "What kind of things?" I asked. She looked down. "I said you were stuck. That you didn't know how to get ahead. That you were tired all the time." She started crying. I didn't say anything. Just listened. "I didn't know he was using it to hurt you." I sat next to her, held her hand. "You're 17. I said. "And he's manipulative. He's been doing that since I was your age." We sat there for an hour. But the fallout was just beginning. The retirement board he was trying to join pulled his invitation. His memoir editor dropped him. People in his golf league stopped returning his calls. He called again. This time angry, but panicked underneath. "You've made your point. Take it down, or I'll make this legal." I answered this time. "Go ahead," I said. "Let's go to court. You think a judge won't ask about those people you fired without cause? Or the woman you threatened into resigning?" He hung up. But I knew something else now. He wasn't going to stop quietly. That's when the email came in. From someone who claimed to be his brother-in-law. My Uncle Ray. I hadn't spoken to Ray in over a decade. He lived in Montana. But he wrote, "I read your piece. Your dad did the same to my daughter. Shamed her when she dropped out of law school. Said she was dead weight. He hasn't spoken to her since. If you're going to tell the truth, I've got some things you should know." Attached were 3 documents. All internal emails from Earl's work days. One of them was him admitting in writing that he shifted blame to a junior employee during a failed deal. Another showed him quietly adjusting commission payouts to undercut a peer. And the last? A handwritten letter to my mother. It was dated 3 weeks before she passed away. It said, "I can't keep covering for you. She's too soft. She's never going to be someone we can be proud of." That was about me. My mom never told me. And I never got to ask her why. So now I had even more hard proof. And something deeper, a wound I didn't even know was there. I didn't just want to hurt his name anymore. I wanted to take back every inch of ground he thought he owned. Everything he used to control, belittle, and shame. It was time to get personal. I booked a small venue. Reached out to a few local women's groups. Parents of single moms. A few former coworkers of his I found online. I set up a speaking event. Title: Raising Ourselves, What Happens When the Parent Becomes the Child. Guess who showed up to the door and got turned away? Earl. I watched from the stage as he stood in the back, red-faced, trying to push his way in. The security I hired, 2 calm ex-Marines, escorted him right out. He shouted, "She's lying!" And someone in the front row said, loud and clear, "Then sue her." He left. I gave my speech. I told the truth. People listened. They clapped. Some cried. I saw Abby in the second row, standing the whole time. I wasn't just telling my story anymore. I was reclaiming it. But this wasn't the end. Not yet. There was one more thing he still cared about. And I just found a way to take that too. After the speaking event, something shifted. I felt it. For years I'd carried his voice in my head, telling me I wasn't enough, wasn't smart, wasn't strong. But that night, watching strangers stand up and thank me for sharing my story, something in me locked into place. But I wasn't finished. Not yet. Because Earl still had one last thing he valued more than anything else. Control over the family name. Let me explain. When my mom passed, he took over the family trust. Said it was better this way. I didn't question it back then because I had no legal background, no time, and honestly, no fight in me. I figured the trust would go to Abby someday anyway, and I didn't want to start a war. But after everything, I started to wonder. What was really in that trust? So I called a lawyer. A friend of a friend. Told him everything. He offered to take a look at the paperwork pro bono after reading my story online. I sent him what little I had. A scanned copy of the will my mom left, and what Earl sent me at the time. 3 days later, I got a call. "Did you know your mother set up a 50-50 split between you and Earl?" I sat down. "Excuse me? She intended for you to have half. He never filed the amendment she signed. He took full control, then converted the trust into a closed estate under his name only. Which is, in plain terms, fraud." My heart was pounding. I remembered that meeting. I was 29. Just had Abby. My mom was dying, and we sat in her hospital room with some attorney she said was helping make sure Abby would be okay. Earl insisted he'd handle the paperwork. Apparently he did. And he erased me in the process. The lawyer asked if I wanted to file suit. I didn't even hesitate. Do it. That same week, Abby got another check in the mail from Earl. This time it was $5,000. No note, just a sticky tab that said, "Use this for housing deposits. Your mother can help with that." I told her she had a choice, keep it, or send it back with a message. She mailed it back with a copy of the speech I gave. She added her own note. "You don't get to buy me anymore. Stay away." We didn't hear back. But 2 weeks later, the lawyer called again. "I need you to be prepared. We're filing publicly. It's going to hit the court system. Once that happens, it's a matter of time before the media notices. Your name might be out there." I said I was ready. I wasn't. The day the filing went live, I got a knock at the door. It was a man in a suit. Looked like he stepped out of a courtroom drama. He handed me a thick envelope. Earl was suing me back. Defamation. Emotional distress. Damages to his reputation. I laughed when I read it. Not because it was funny. But because it was so him. He was trying to fight with money. That's all he knew. If he couldn't shut me up quietly, he tried to scare me loud. But the best part? He didn't know about the backup files. Everything I wrote in the father figure, every quote, every accusation, I had it backed up. Screenshots. Emails. Recorded phone calls with former employees who gave consent. And my lawyer had already spoken to 2 of them. Both were willing to testify. But here's where it gets even better. Remember Uncle Ray? The one who emailed me those letters? He reached out again. Said he wanted to help. Said he had something Earl really didn't want anyone to see. A family secret. Back in the 90s, Earl had invested in a private fund that later got fined for fraudulent practices. He was never officially charged, but he quietly pulled his name from the partner list before the SEC moved in. According to Ray, Earl threatened 2 people into silence and paid off a third to keep his name clean. Ray still had the records. Emails, mostly. Screenshots of conversations, notes from meetings. Enough to put real pressure on Earl if he kept pushing. I met Ray in person for the first time in 14 years. We sat in a coffee shop and he slid a flash drive across the table. I'm tired of watching him pretend he's the hero. And that's when the next twist hit. My lawyer told me Earl's lawyer had just contacted him, not to escalate, but to settle. They wanted to make it all go away. Quietly. But I said no. I don't want quiet. Not after years of being dismissed, ignored, talked down to. Not after he made my daughter feel like I was someone to pity. Not after he robbed me of what little security my mom tried to leave me. This isn't just about me anymore. It's about every daughter who was told she'd never measure up. Every single mom who got sneered at by a man in a golf shirt. Every woman who got shut out of her own family's future. And I'm not done. The next court date is in 2 weeks. He still thinks he can win. But I've got witnesses. I've got documents. And I've got something he'll never have, the truth. 2 weeks later, I walked into Spokane County Superior Court in a borrowed blazer and a pair of flats I'd glued the sole back onto. My lawyer, Daniel, met me at the entrance and handed me a thick folder. All right, he said. Let's finish this. Earl was already inside, sitting with his high-priced attorney, some polished guy from Seattle who looked like he'd never sweat in his life. Earl looked smaller than usual. Pale. His hands trembled slightly as he shuffled his papers. That shook me more than I expected. Because part of me still remembered being a little girl, trying to make him proud. Waiting for him to tell me I was enough. He never did. The trial lasted 3 days. Day 1, we presented the fraud case. Daniel showed the court how Earl had erased the will amendment my mom signed before she died. That amendment split the trust equally between us. Instead, he filed the outdated version and funneled everything into a single estate under his name. The judge leaned forward. Was this notarized? He asked. Daniel nodded. Yes, Your Honor. I have the notary's testimony here. She remembers the signing clearly, because it was the same day my client went into labor. That hit hard. Earl's lawyer tried to spin it. Said my mom was confused. Toward the end. That maybe I'd pressured her. But then we called in the nurse from the hospice center. She testified that my mother was completely lucid. The day she signed the amendment, and even told the staff, I need to make sure my daughter and granddaughter are protected. Day 2, Earl's lawyer went on the offensive. They brought up my blog. My Reddit posts. The articles I'd written. Tried to paint me as someone obsessed with destroying Earl's reputation. She's parading her father's flaws in public forums, the lawyer said. She's humiliating him, seeking attention, not justice. That was the moment I stood up and asked to speak. The judge allowed it. I walked to the front, palms sweating. Looked right at Earl. He called me a failure, I said. He told my daughter I wasn't really a parent. That she needed him to have a future. I paused. No one said a word. He stole from me. But worse, he made me feel like I deserved it. Like my work, my life, my love for my daughter wasn't enough. So yes. I wrote about it. Because staying quiet nearly killed me. Day 3, it all came together. Daniel presented the emails. The old colleagues who'd submitted sworn statements. Even the files from Uncle Ray, proving Earl's involvement in the shady investment fund years ago. Earl's face turned red. He looked like he might pass out. But the moment that ended it all? The letter. The one Earl wrote to my mom, calling me too soft. Saying I'd never be someone we could be proud of. I handed it to the judge myself. There was silence in the courtroom after she read it. 30 seconds of nothing. Then the judge looked straight at Earl and said, You've built a very clean image over the years, Mr. R. But this courtroom is interested in the truth, not the image. She ruled in my favor on every count. Earl was forced to return half the trust estate. Over $240,000. He also had to publicly retract his claims of slander and issue an apology letter, or face additional damages. He refused at first. Until we filed a second defamation suit and he realized the original witnesses were still willing to testify. He caved. The letter arrived in my mailbox 2 weeks later. It was typed. Cold. Forced. But it was signed. I was wrong. I said things no father should say. My daughter's strength was in the choices I dismissed. Her story is her own, and I no longer have any right to tell it for her. It wasn't real. Not really. But that didn't matter. Because it was public. And I had it framed. I sent a copy to every person who'd read the father figure. I even posted it on the same forums where my story first went viral. Earl tried to disappear after that. Sold his house. Moved out of state. Some retirement village in Arizona, I heard. He doesn't call anymore. But Abby? She's a sophomore at Oregon State now. Nursing program. Dean's List. She got an internship at a trauma center in Portland. Last Christmas, she came home and we sat at the kitchen table over mugs of hot cocoa. She looked at me and said, "I used to think he was the strong one. The leader. But he walked away from everything when things got hard." Then she smiled at me. "You didn't. That was the real win." But I won't lie and say I came out perfect. I lost time. I lost trust. I lost pieces of myself trying to be good enough for a man who didn't know what love looked like unless it came with praise or money. But I got something better in return. I got my story back. I got my voice back. And I made sure the man who tried to silence me will never forget the sound of it. Ever again.